welcome, Bob. I'm so excited to have you on a podcast, a fellow accountant. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Connie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Finances and numbers are my jam. But first, tell the audience where in the world are you located, and then tell them or us also something that has nothing to do with what you do for business or for a profession, and that surprises people when they hear it about you.
Sure. So I live in West Los Angeles, close to the ocean. And what surprises people? I live in a big city. I have 11 chickens.
A fellow chicken owner. I
Yeah.
have also 11 chickens. Since
Oh,
Saturday, I've also 11. Well, actually 10 hens and a rooster, but yeah, 11 chickens. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of fun.
That is fun. An accountant with chickens. I love it.
That's right. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, right?
Hey, they're all hatched.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me first, I really want to know, why did you become an accountant? It's something that most people can't understand why I became an accountant. So let me ask you why you became an accountant.
Yes. So it was not on the radar. From an
Exactly.
early age, I was going to be a lawyer, and I went to college, all planning, taking all my legal, constitution, law, everything. I was going to be a lawyer. In high school, a friend of mine told me to take some accounting classes. He thought I would do well in it. It was an easy A. And so in college, I took accounting to help my grade point average. And then I realized, oh, this is something that actually is it came easy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it, but a lot of it just made sense. And I thought, I don't really like some of the lawyers I've been meeting. I don't really want to be a lawyer. This is a way to actually go into a profession and get my CPA license and not have to do more school. And I didn't really I love the legal research, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. So it served me really well. And accounting has just been something that, and certainly experience and time over the years, it's gotten easier, but it's just something I enjoy. I love making it balance. I love that it's logical.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
2 + 2 is not 4, you've made a mistake.
Yes.
So I liked that. It was very comforting to me.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same about accounting. Well, I don't do tax returns. I don't know whether you do. So I'm
Yeah.
more into what actually comes after the bookkeeping, like
Yeah.
working with the numbers, and I love that part a lot.
Yeah.
It's so funny how you say like you didn't like the lawyers you meet. Like most people tell me, I don't like all the accountants I meet.
Ah,
So it's probably about just as bad, right? You become a lawyer or an accountant. Both
one of
people
the
don't want
two.
to see you.
No, exactly. We're like the dentist. I mean, I do a lot of taxes. I work with entrepreneurs and small business. So I
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of strategy, um,
Mm-hmm.
business management, and tax strategies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I think numbers are exciting. They're it's like a code, and they tell you then the story. And as long as you understand the code,
Mhm.
you can tell the story, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. But I mean, this leads kind of like into it. Like people don't like lawyers, people don't like accountants. We're right up there with the dentist.
Right.
and and I read in your book that somebody was saying like he wasn't minding so much to be at the doctor hearing a bad health
Right.
condition he's having, but he was really threading to come to your place,
Yeah.
which is it's really sad. So let's talk about emotions around not just accountants, because I hope you and we can lighten that a bit, that there
Yeah.
is actually very approachable and very kind and very nice accountants out there.
Yeah.
But the numbers, so I think has more to do with finances, with what's behind the accountant. And that's what your expertise is, because you even wrote a book about it. Let's talk about a bit about this. How did you let's say like this. How did you decide to want to write a book?
Mhm.
Did you yourself have some issues with finances and you felt like you needed to help, or was it more like just your clients?
Both. It was absolutely both.
Mm,
Um, as a CPA, I was not walking the talk. I could tell everybody else what to do, but I was the exception to the rule. So I wasn't saving, I wasn't investing, and all those things. I had my own personal story around money and finance.
mm,
At the same time, I work with a lot of entertainment folks and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. And I would give people some really good advice and they would go out and do the exact opposite. And so I realized that unless I started to understand their story around money, that I
mm,
wasn't going to really be able to help them. And so what happened was I I was talking to a friend who was a comic, and they were telling me how horrible they were because their siblings were all doctors and their parents were doctors, and they had chosen this shameful profession of comedy,
mhm,
and what a loser they were. And I realized in that moment, so many people, especially artists, especially entrepreneurs, people in entertainment, and in the world in general, people take themselves out when it comes to money. That's not for me. I'm not good with numbers. I don't know how to save, all those things. And I realized, oh my goodness, here are these people shaming themselves, feeling guilty, feeling very alone, and I
yeah.
wanted to just really start conversations about money to normalize them and to let people know you're not alone and there's no shame in not knowing how to do everything.
Mm,
And so that was really my mission. And I wrote the book and started teaching workshops and just got a certification in somatic body-based therapy and really just started to dig into people's money stories because we all have a story and every story has a cost. It's just we have to decide if it's costing us too much or if we're good with what we're paying for our story.
yeah. Yeah, what I experience a lot, and we can get into it later, why the clutter is connected to the money story. But what I experience a lot is people try to put their head in the sand, but we can't escape it, right? It's like money is just here, as a trading tool to,
Right.
and we can't escape it, right? Like with other things we could maybe say, oh, I'm not interested in science, so we just stick the head in in the sand and
Right.
don't deal with it, right? We can, there's so many things we can actually just decide it's not for me, but money is not one of them, and we have to.
We do. And, I would say, and I've heard this said many times in many different ways, but when you don't make a decision about your money, you're making a choice. It
Mm-hmm.
is a choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, what people don't understand is like when they don't make a decision, they're still making a decision,
That's right.
and it's oftentimes one that sabotages you,
Mhm.
because there would be at least a half-ass better decision to make if you would
Right.
just a little bit pay attention, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is so similar. Like that's why I was so excited to talk with you on the podcast, because like I come from finance, I still help people with finance, but what I noticed too is like finances are connected to clutter in
Right.
many ways. So when people have clutter, they have also a lot of shame. And for a while I was also saying, and it's still true in a way, like if you feel like people have struggled to talk about money because they're ashamed, when you start talking about clutter or you go into their house, it gets almost worse. Like what
Yeah.
I sometimes experience, it's almost worse because again, when they have all this clutter, they wasted so much money. They know there's a lot of money tied up in this, and there's
Right.
almost a second layer of shame on top of it,
Yeah.
which is so heartbreaking to see because there's so much that we could solve by just being a little bit more intentional. And I loved, I watched a video on your website where you talked about why you wrote the book, and I think you said too you were very not intentional in your younger years with money, and now you're very intentional about how you want to spend it so that it's in aligned with what you want to do in the future. And this is basically it, right? I think this is the the core of it, no? Because we're just sabotaging ourselves if we're not looking at money, if we're just spending it willy-nilly on stuff that we don't want and need, and then it becomes clutter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of things. One, I am very intentional in my conversations, and I'm very intentional in how I spend my money,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to make sure that I'm saying what I want to say, and I want to make sure I'm spending how I want to spend to be in alignment with goals that I've set or things that are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this clutter piece is really important. I think we have clutter for a couple of reasons. One, I think there's I love this phrase, sunk cost bias,
Mm-hmm.
right? The sunk cost bias. Well, I paid for it, so I got to make it last forever. I got
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
my
yeah.
money's worth. So got to just hold on to it. Not going to use it, but I'm going to hold on to it because
Mm-hmm.
I spent some money on it and I can't get the money back. So I'm going to hold on to it. So that's one reason we start to clutter, because that sunk cost bias. I spent money and I don't want to have wasted it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also think then we start to get overwhelmed, and the clutter helps us in a way initially. Oh, there's so much going on. I can't really focus on
Mm-hmm.
anything. It's a great distraction. Oh, there's lots of clutter. Um, Me personally, and I talk about this in the book as well, when you're getting ready to do this work at looking at your money story, is you gotta create a space, even if it's a small carpet that you sit on where there's no clutter.
Mm-hmm.
My desk, I don't like clutter on my desk. I've got a couple of pockets, even when there's lots of stuff going on. My little home gym has to be clutter free. I have these spaces because I've got to be able to be free of all the obstacles that are popping up and distracting me. I just want free space. Whether you're a writer, whether you're an artist, whether you're a psychiatrist, whether you're an athlete, the clutter is just for me stumbling blocks if we don't start to manage the clutter.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. I mean, they have already scientific research that proves it. They could measure all the brain waves. I'm a little bit a geek
Yeah.
of that because of that. So it is totally that way. And this is actually one of the things that when I was still working in corporate years and years and years ago, they were always joking and saying, "Oh, Connie must have nothing to do because her desk is so clean." And I always said, like, I almost do two jobs. And the reason why I can do this is because my desk is clean and I don't have to fight the clutter or the chaos on top of being focused. And this is what I often say too. This is one of the reasons why I say decluttering is self-love or clutter clearing is self-love, because you're actually making your life easier. You're right now. And
Yeah.
so I think it's the same like when you're actually starting to look at finances, as scary as it is, you're actually only doing yourself a favor. You're making your life easier if you start doing it, not harder. And that is, I think, also the message that is sometimes so hard to get into the skull of these people.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So it's tax season, right? So I have
Yes.
I have 200 tax returns piled around my office. And yesterday on a Sunday, I came in and I spent an hour just organizing everything, putting all
Mm-hmm.
the stacks where I had let things fall. I just completely cleaned up. Everybody's like, "What happened to your office?" Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know I've got some deadlines and I want my mind free. And so I had to just, yeah, it's fine to be a little bit of a working mess during tax season. And then I get everything cleaned up at a certain point. But that process of decluttering and going, I do it in the office as well. Clean out the storage room, clean out the
Mm-hmm.
office supplies. We're not using that state. Throw it out, get rid of it, recycle it, whatever we need to do, so that
Mm-hmm.
I'm only working with what we need and
Yeah.
not all this stuff that, like, oh wait, oh that one doesn't, oh that doesn't work, oh that, get rid of it. Don't
Yeah.
need it.
Exactly. Exactly. To me, when we take the time to do stuff like this, especially in the office, when we're taking the time to organize everything and to create a more organized and peaceful environment, it's almost like in production when we have pre-production where everything is lined up so that actually afterwards you can assemble properly. And
Yeah.
it's like investing, and then you reap the benefits later. You're investing some time, but you will have it so much better afterwards when you have to do the work. And yeah, so very smart, very smart man. But like I said, and I mean, I'm not a perfect in this either, not in the money and not in the clutter. I talk about that on the podcast too. I also say we all have clutter somewhere. And
Right.
even if it's just mental clutter, and we can talk about the mental clutter too, which you call a little bit different, and we have emotional clutter, but we all have it. It's just a matter of whether we are trying to hide it or whether we're trying to work with it, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the more intentional we get and the more we say, these are the things, this is how I want to show up in the world, taking care of that clutter, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, is spending that extra little bit of time. It pays off big dividends. It sort of reminds me, it's different, but it reminds me Gandhi used to say when he would meditate an hour every day. And then when he had really big things going on, he would meditate 2 or 3 hours.
yeah.
People were like, well, the thing is, you got to do the pre-work.
Exactly.
And the pre-work is taking care of the clutter, is taking care of whether it's emotional, physical. It's starting to check in, get a reality check, and then start doing the work, start cleaning up, start letting things go that aren't really of service.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is too, is like we always have clutter, like we're never done. This is also something that people sometimes say, oh, when am I going to be done? Well, you're never going to be done, because it's like, there was this quote, and I forgot now who said that, but you can't just bath once. You have to bath over and over and over.
Right.
It's similar here, or you can also compare it with our digestive system. We keep the body keeps what he can use, and the rest he lets go. And if we're not doing this, like in the outer world, we get constipated, right? And then everything gets very difficult. And if, for example, our body gets constipated and we don't solve for this, we can get very, very sick. And it's the same like with our environment or with our business. So I like when these little when you can make these little comparisons for people to understand, because something I get the pushback often and say, oh, no, I'm an artist. I can have a mess. Every artist has a mess. And I'm saying, like, no, this is not true. Not every artist has a mess. And just imagine if you're successful now, or if you feel like you can do a lot now, how much more you could actually do if your brain would be free and not focused, with half the brain unconsciously focused on your visible, or just in general on your clutter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Clear the mind, clear the space.
Yeah. But let's get back to the money part. Because your book is called The Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money. And so this is, some people are somehow not aware of it, but it's so normal or logical that we are very emotional about money, right? That our decisions come from the emotions. It's the same with clutter. There are lots of parallels. We may think about a decision, or whether or not we want to buy something, whether we want to save or not, even us intentional people, but in the end, it's still an emotional decision. Or it comes from the emotion. So talk a little bit about that. How did you come, like you call it the money nerve. I like that, the money nerve. So how did you get to the name? And then you also say, like, everybody has a different kind of a money nerve. So talk a little bit.
Yeah. So for me, our emotions around money and a lot of other things, but I'm focused on money. Our money, we feel it viscerally, right? If I win a lottery ticket, there's this euphoric feeling. If I go into a store and they decline my credit card, I feel like I've been kicked in the gut, right? Or I've just bounced a check, or I just find out this thing that I need is going to cost me 5 times what I thought it was. Our physical body reacts. And so there's a lot of sickness. There's a lot of ailments. There's all kinds of things we can trace back to this emotional piece around money, or even if it's our health or our weight or whatever it might be. But again, with money, I wanted people to understand it's visceral. And I've had so many people say, well, I'm not very emotional when it comes to money. That it doesn't apply to me. I ask people, well, how do you split a check with a large group of people? Right. Well, then you watch some emotions go crazy. Somebody's got to pay the bill. Somebody doesn't want to pay the bill. Somebody wants to split it. Somebody didn't have the salad. I didn't have alcohol. Right. And you watch people get into fist fights. And again, it's that kind of thing, where we're not realizing that emotionally we're being driven to make a
Mm-hmm.
certain choice. I've got to pay for the whole dinner so everybody thinks I'm wealthy. I've got to pay for dinner so everybody thinks I have it together, because my parents always said I would never amount to anything. I
Mm-hmm.
just proved them wrong, right? So our ego
Mm-hmm.
steps in, sometimes our false ego, right? And tells us, oh yeah, we got to do this so people be impressed. And so we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, maybe, and maybe I don't even like the Joneses. I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't even. Why am I competing with them? I don't even know them.
Mm.
But we get into this game, and I think it's crosses all genders, but men's especially are like, you got to be the breadwinner. You got to make more bread than the other person making bread,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, oh, I that's not enough. I got to do 10 more things. Oh, I did those 10. I got to do 20. And so we got to keep, and then we don't get to stop and enjoy it because we're so busy trying to accumulate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think for women, it is just, oh, she has the new handbag. I have to have the new handbag. Or why does she have every 2 months a new handbag? I need a new handbag too.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, it's very crazy. And like, again, this with the clutter, it's just that's what happens then when we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, then we're creating clutter and we're
Right.
creating things that we actually, if we would ask ourselves, we would probably don't not even want it,
Right.
because we're just buying it because we're not even thinking about it. We're not intentional about it. We're just doing it because A, like you said, the ego, or B, because the neighbor has it, or whoever. And then I also saw on your website, I don't remember whether it was your poll or just a general poll, that 61% of people agree that they avoid looking at how much they're spending, which is then the result of it, right? You just want to
Yeah.
keep up with their Joneses, but then you don't look at how much you're spending. And at
Right.
the same time, 55% of them are frustrated that they are not where they want to be with their finances. And
Right.
you don't have to be an accountant to realize that this is not adding up, right? So you
Yeah,
can't.
absolutely. There is a big disconnect between I want this and why don't I have it? Because I'm not dealing with it.
Yeah.
Um, one of, there's I've talked to so many different people that will say, when I go buy stuff, I ask myself, is this in service to me? Is this in service to my values? And checking that out. One of the things that I do a lot with people, I have a what, why, what, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask myself these four questions. What do I want? Why do I want it?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I have it? What am I willing to do to get it?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, it might be the why do I want it? Because I want to look super cool. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to judge that.
Yeah.
Like but I need to understand it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so because like I knew this guy, he was like, I want to have fancy cars and nice houses.
Mm-hmm.
But what that forced him to do was he looked for bargains. So he bought the most craziest car, but he got it for half price because
Mm-hmm.
he was like, I know I want to have a cool car that everybody's impressed with, but I want to pay full dollar,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with why you choose it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about being honest.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
I'm not here to shame anybody about any of their choices. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, don't tell me that you're a victim because you made the choice. I won't support victimhood when it
Yes.
comes to finance,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to shame you for the choices you made.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Same here with so-called clutter. I always say, like, just if I would classify it as clutter, doesn't mean you classify it as clutter.
Right.
That clutter is personal. It depends. When you're not using it, when you didn't really want it, then it's clutter. If you want something that I don't understand, how could anybody want this? That doesn't matter. It's not about
Right.
me, it's about you. But
Yeah.
I would add one more question to your row of questions when people want to buy something, especially from the clutter perspective, is what am I willing to give up if I buy this? And
Yeah.
when it's about clutter, or when it's about certain things that they want to buy and they maybe don't really have the money, or they have already all kinds of stuff at home, what am I giving up? What can I not buy because I'm buying this? Or
Yeah.
what can I not do? Like, for example, going on vacation or whatever, if I buy this. So there is this quote about if you say no to one thing, you say no to one thing. If you say yes to one thing, you say no to 1,000 other things, or somewhere.
Right.
I butcher it, but something
Yeah.
on that line. And a lot of people don't consider what they cannot do because they're buying something or they're
Right.
bringing home some more stuff, you know.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point. I do think what's interesting, and I think this is true for a lot of people. A lot of people think, oh, if you've got $1 million, or if your net worth is $1 million, you've got $1 million to spend on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? No, you still, even people with millions of dollars make choices about how they're going to spend or invest or save. There's still a choice involved. There's still decision making. You still have to proactively participate with your finances.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I meant with nobody can escape it, right? And just because, and it's like with clutter, just because you're kind of got your house or your office to an organized state doesn't mean it stays that way. It's the same with finances. Just because you maybe are debt free now, okay, wonderful, first level reached. Now we go further. We can never escape it. We always have to deal with it. And I think with money, it's also, so I don't remember exactly where I read it, but it could be in one of Benjamin Hardy's books about the future self, or maybe I heard it somewhere else. But I heard that the problem with spending is that people often do the short, like they get the short-term gratification over the long-term gratification because they can't relate to their future self. So like if you say, oh, you should save for retirement, well, that's maybe 20, 30 years down the road. For some people, for us, maybe not that many. I'm not saying how many for us, but maybe not so many. But still, if it goes too far out, I think the research said 5 years, the people can still kind of recognize themselves. But as the minute it's further out, it's like a stranger. And so that's why they're so much more apt to buy something that if they would think about it and wanted to plan for the long term, they wouldn't do it. But because the 10-year Conny, for example, to me, that's a stranger. It's not me. So I look after me and not after a stranger, right?
Right. Well, there's a great study called the Stanford Marshmallow Study.
Yes. Yes.
And I love this study. One of the things that I think a lot of people could do to work with their children, at least if it's too late for them, is to cultivate this delayed gratification.
Yes.
Because the studies have shown when they followed all these kids through their adult life, that children that learn delayed gratification are much better off financially than those that do not understand delayed gratification. And so even though it is 10 years down the line, I still know it's going to be me at some point.
Yeah.
And so I can't completely, visualize exactly how it's going to look, but I want to make sure whatever it looks like, I got lots of money in the bank to make sure that I don't have to deal with medical issues or housing issues or any of those things where for many people it's a struggle because they're still living check to check, today only, and they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s. And there's not a lot, at least in the tax world, there's not a lot I can do for some folks because they miss the boat.
Yeah. Which is really sad, But still, so the reason also why I brought this up is because I read in your book that one of the most important tools, I think you call it, to get out of your money issues is visualization, you mentioned. And so when we try to visualize us in 5 years or 10 years, or like we said, a retirement, how would you go about this, that somebody visualizes themselves, and how does that help them to maybe make better decisions today?
Yeah, well, so I think that somebody that might be new to this, I wouldn't just sit down and start visualizing. I actually think it's great to sort of map it out. Right. I want to be around my family. I want to be traveling. I want to have a house with a big yard. I want to have a dog and a pony, like whatever those things are. Right. just write it all down to sort of help you when you get to the visualization part, so that you can start to, okay, family's important to me. I see all my family around me and we're having healthy, wonderful relationships and we're supportive. And I see the house and I see my bank accounts and I see that I'm able to spend on things that feel really important to me, and that I don't have to completely skimp and scrape and worry because all these things have come to fruition. And to start to allow it to be that, yes, I am this is me. So, for me, one of the things that I visualized, and I was doing this unconsciously, but this is what I was doing even early on. I got to California. I was in a very depressed place. And I thought, I saw these sailboats and I said, you know what? If I get on a sailboat, my life is going to change dramatically for the better. And so I made a sailboat happen. Like, I visualized it and came to fruition. My best friends I met them living across the boat from me on their boat. They are still friends to this day. They had a major influence on my life. But I actually started to see these things. Okay, yep, I can have, yep, this is happening. This is happening. And so if we can't imagine it happening when it happens, then we're out of our comfort zone.
Yes.
I see so many people get a windfall of money and they're used to having $100 in their bank account, or just not overdrawn, or just $1,000. And the minute 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 pops in that bank account, I got to get rid of it. I'm not comfortable with this. So let me just spend it all. One of the things that I really encourage clients of mine to do, whether it's tax clients or coaching clients, when they get a windfall, they're like, Bob, I'm going to get $100,000. I'm like, great. Just let it sit in your bank account for a month. Yeah. What? Just let it sit there. What? But I have these. Yeah, your bills were there before. They'll be there after. Let your money stay. Become friends with your money. Right? Yeah. We're so busy getting it out of our wallet. The minute it hits our bank, we're like, go, go, go. No, come on. Come everybody. Come on. Let's all hang out. And so starting to visualize that and being okay with being more money in your bank account.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Most people don't realize that it can be uncomfortable to have a lot of money in a bank. It's the same like with clutter. I always get back to clutter. But it's the same, like if you clean up somebody's house, that could be very uncomfortable. I always say, like, clear surfaces is something most people can't handle. They need to put something there. It's like, it can't be empty. There doesn't. You don't have to have anything there. And so this is the same. And you were earlier saying that you worked a lot with celebrities and stuff. And we hear always these stories, like sports celebrities who made millions and millions during their active years, and then all of a sudden are living on the street because they don't have it anymore. They blow it. And it's kind of like this upper limit problem in a way too, right? Where our brain says, oh, this is not familiar now. And then we forget that we're actually in a better place now than before. So I love that you say, just leave it sitting there for a bit. That's
it's amazing
to handle it.
It's amazing how many people get really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And it's a good practice. Like, I'm not saying don't pay your bills. I'm just saying you don't have to pay it the instant it hits your bank account.
Yes.
Like, the thing is, we want to learn to respond instead of react in life. And I think so many of us react.
Yes.
And if we can learn to breathe before we make a money decision or any kind of decision, but to learn to, again, for me, it's all about intentionality. So if I can breathe and check in with myself so that when I do these things, I'm doing it with intention and I'm doing it consciously. I think the other piece around money that's really hard for people is when I start getting money, I might have to actually tell somebody no. I might actually have to set a boundary. I might actually have to let some of my friends go. And there's a lot of fear in that.
Yeah.
There's, oh my God, they're gonna judge me, or I'm not. I should have to be able to say yes to everything. No, sometimes no is the best yes.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
Right. And most of us are not trained. And I actually spend on my online course, we spend a whole week about difficult conversations. Because whether it's losing weight whether it's having
Yeah.
money, whether it's whatever it might be, buying a house, any of these things, we may have to set some boundaries, or people may not be excited for us. Oh, you get, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's that picture that people sometimes talk about, the crabs in the bucket, and one wants to get out and everybody else pulls them down. And
Yeah.
and you, I saw on your website too, you said somewhere about, I think it's way at the top there, change the story of your family around money,
Yeah.
or I butcher
Yeah.
it. Sorry, I
Yeah.
apologize. But
No,
that's
no.
exactly it too. It's like if somebody comes from a family who never had much or were always struggling, they kind of feel like they're betraying their family if they're not
Yeah.
struggling with money, right? And
Yeah.
just in that sentence alone, you see how many emotions are tied up with the money. Or when I work with clients, when they want to reduce clutter or not buy as much stuff anymore, and all their friends go shopping, and they say, I can't go shopping because I know if I go shopping I buy stuff, so I can't go shopping, so poor me can't go shopping. And yeah, and it's there's so much tied up in it that
Well, it is. I mean, so there's a couple things I'll say to that. I do these money groups with people, 5 people, 10 people, and we share. And so I've worked with a couple of groups of people that just happen to all share coming from marginalized communities, even though they're very successful.
mm-hmm,
And what was really painful to hear was, even though they've made it, they've got an MBA or
mm-hmm,
whatever they've got going on, this ability or inability to create generational wealth, to be able to pass something down because their parents and their grandparents and their great great grandparents just survived.
mm-hmm,
And so I think to be able to look at that and to heal the family, or to be the first one to go to college. I was talking to this woman, first one to go to college, first one to make 100,000.
yeah,
It gave all of her siblings permission to go for it, right?
yes,
And
yes,
sometimes we need to be the one that jumps in the deep end
mm-hmm,
and lead the way, because there is no path and we're creating the path for others to give themselves permission.
mm-hmm,
I didn't give myself permission for a long time.
mm-hmm,
And to be able to say, you know what, go for it. You're allowed.
yeah,
There's no limit as long as you can see it and feel it, and or you're willing to do the work. And so that's a real big piece for me, is this generational wealth and changing that story of my family.
mm-hmm,
The other piece that was really, I remember my boss at the time, when I first got my license, um, and he said to me, and I've experienced this in so many different ways, but I remember it at that time, he said, Bob, now that you've got your CPA license, you're financially starting to make things happen, you may have to leave some of your friends behind.
mm-hmm,
I was like, oh, you're so wrong, right? Because I had a belief that I got to bring everybody with me.
yes, yeah,
And there's a lot of grief in that,
mm-hmm, yeah,
because not everybody wants to come, and not everybody wants to be happy, and not everybody wants to be intentional. And so, like, even in my own family, even in my own friends, yeah, not everybody gets to come along. And that's what I also heard in these meetings and group
mm-hmm,
sessions with marginalized people from communities that are very marginalized.
mm-hmm,
If they don't bring everybody with them, they get shunned. Oh,
yes,
you're not going to take care of your
yeah,
aunt and your brother and your sister and your
yeah,
well, then you're dead to us. And
mm-hmm,
so there's a real emotional cost
mm-hmm,
if I succeed and don't find a way to bring people with me.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, this is, for me, this is a really emotional and personal for me, because yeah, not everybody gets to come. And it's so painful, because I wanted to bring it, like, don't you see the amazing things that are on the other side? Don't you want to? Yeah, I don't. And so that's real. That's real.
yeah. Yeah, and the crazy part is, like, literally you trying to help them because you're trying to take them along, and they're actually attacking you. And I agree that probably happens even more with marginalized groups than with us. But even we struggle with that. I remember when I moved away from my home country and into a different country, it's always like these decisions, they always bring some loss with them that you
Yeah.
have to be aware of, even though you choose to go, like I can't even imagine if somebody has to flee their country and go
Yeah.
into a different country without really wanting to do that, because the grief I had to accept that comes with leaving my home country, going into a different country, all the beautiful stuff that is here is way over here. There's all kinds of grief.
Yeah.
Still, even though I chose it. And yeah, and so this is a good point, and this is the other emotional hurdle. And then also that's maybe why people don't even want to know, and they think it's easier if they can just ignore.
Yeah.
Which is not true. I think it bites them in the ass, sorry to say, eventually, right?
It does, but again, it's going back to that short-sighted.
Mhm.
I get to feel comfortable today.
Yes.
And the thing is, it's I mean, not to be a downer, but like I just recently two different friends and family members recently been diagnosed with terminal illness. The thing is, there were signs.
Yeah.
And they chose to ignore it and chose to ignore it and chose to ignore it. And now it's irreversible and there's a panic setting in.
Yeah.
But there was a choice there. Yeah, I'm not going to deal. I'm not going to deal. I'm not going to deal. And now there's complete, oh my God, how do I undo this? Well, sometimes we have to pay attention to the signs
Yes.
and the messages that we're getting so that we can adjust and course correct.
Yes. And I feel too, is like, even if it's too scary to do it ourselves, then maybe we have to find somebody that holds our hand or helps or supports.
Absolutely.
We all need support, right? Like you and I, we may not need it in the money part right now because we kind of figured that one out, but there is other areas of our life where we would need support if something dramatic would happen or something challenging would happen. And that is, I think, the other stigma in a way, that people feel like they have to solve it all by themselves. They can't accept help. They have to, well, I should be smart enough to figure it out myself. No, maybe not necessarily, especially not when you're in such an emotional state. You're probably not even thinking straight. So find some help.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We have two hands that we can reach out and reach
Mm.
out. And I think even myself, for so long, I'm going to do it myself and I'll do it wrong before I'll ask somebody to help me do it right.
Yeah, exactly. And with the head through the wall, rather do it myself. Yeah, and I think that is especially if you're like, how do you say that, maybe a little bit successful, or you're peer successful in life, then you even more think, oh, now I have to be able to do it myself.
Yeah.
And and the other ones that maybe feel not successful, they for sure don't want to ask for help because they think like, oh, there's so much I would need help with. It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have one more question around the visualization. So because I'm always about the practical part, and I just put out a podcast episode about, like, when we're setting intentions, I talked about the 4 levels, and the first 2 are basically more like wishful thinking, but we have to bring it down to the practical, because we can't just like, you can't just say, okay, in 10 years I have my sailboat, right? Or however many years you gave yourself for your boat.
Right.
We have to do something too. So can you talk a little bit about how you see it, how we can bring this, which is important, this visualization, this wishful, this intentional, bring it down to practical, to do something?
Well, I think when you visualize things, you also have to get, you have to have a clear purpose or a clear vision. So when I'm in a workshop and I'll say, who wants to be rich? I want to be rich. I want to be rich. Well, what's rich? $100,000, $10,000, $2 million, right? We have to get really clear when we're visualizing. And it's different for everybody. So the more specific you can get, even down to the details, red door, whatever it might be. I think that's super important. I think it's important to, like, I do a little bit of self-talk to myself. I let myself know it's okay to want these things. It's okay to have these things, right? I give myself I actually sometimes like to out loud give myself permission to do things so that the universe knows it's okay. I'm okay with it. It's because I used to go, oh, I want this. No, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So to let yourself know it's okay to want these things. And I may not get everything that I want. Right. But I can visualize and move towards them. But I also, and that's why when I'm spending money and all that stuff, I ask myself, is this in alignment with my vision? When I'm doing visioning and I say,
Yeah.
I want to have a house or I want to have this, am I doing things that are, when I spend that money, is this in alignment? Am I moving towards my goals? Because if I'm not, like, then I'm just talking. Then I'm just talking. And so for me, it's about getting real specific. That's why I like writing it out first, but being really clear. I want to have $1 million within 5 years. I want to be in better connection with my family by the end of this year. How am I going to do that? I'm going to start reaching out to them. Maybe I'll start visiting them. Maybe I'll call them more often, right? I have to actually do things that are going to create the vision that I have. And that's the other piece is a lot of people, oh, I want a Mercedes. I'm going to chant for a Mercedes. It's going to show up under my bed. No, you actually have to participate. You actually have to show up and you have to energize the vision. And so but I think mantras are a great way to help the visioning. I'm grateful. What do all the things I'm grateful for, right?
I heard somebody actually say, and I actually practice that now. I find that very, very helpful. She said, be grateful for the things you have, but really, like, be great, like, like especially with manifestation or visioning, these woo-woo people always say like, oh, be grateful before you have it. But she says, be grateful for what you have. And like literally, and so I'm starting to write down, and sometimes I'm almost getting upset with myself because I can't come up with the amount of things to be grateful for that I say I want to be grateful for. And I'm like, how ungrateful of you to not being grateful. But that is actually a part too, like, and also like really understanding what all we're having, because this is another thing, like even the people who are really bad off in our Western world are still often way better off than other people in other countries.
For sure.
And being grateful for what you have, even if you don't have much, is for sure a good thing. Another thing that I liked and that I thought you might mention too, when I asked you the question about the practical part, is you said that you sometimes wait quite a long time before you actually make the final decision to go out and buy it. That's something similar like I do. I started with, I have to sleep over it. And some people find this silly. No, you don't have to sleep. Yes, I do. And actually, the other thing I started just recently to do is I write down what I wanted to do, similar to what you said, and then wait and start. And then I start noticing that a day or two later, it's not even half as important anymore to get that thing,
Yeah.
And I did this as a self-experiment, because some people say, oh, I really want it. And I say, well, just wait a bit. Maybe tomorrow or the next day you don't want it anymore. So I actually tried this on myself. So I think that's a good tactic too, not go run out and buy everything on a spur of the moment whim thing, but.
Yeah, and I watch people doing it. Always these days, it freaks me out when people just go, "Oh, we have to buy it now because we're saving money, even though we don't really need it, but we're saving money because it's on sale."
But this is what the marketing and advertising world tells us, right? If it's on sale, you're saving money, and I'm always like, you're not saving any money at all, because money is flying out of your wallet. So where are you saving?
You are still spending. Well, I do, going back to just real quick to the grateful piece, because I've traveled extensively, I've really shifted, because when I was first traveling, I was a very entitled American, and hot water.
Yeah.
The fact that I woke up today and I'm breathing, I'm grateful for that, because the alternative is 6 feet under. And some people didn't wake up today.
Or on a lung machine, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm grateful. I'm alive. I've got another opportunity to go for my dreams. I have another day to envision. I have another day to show up and show compassion and hopefully have a positive impact. And so I'm grateful for that. I was in Zimbabwe and they're digging with a stick. We had to dig these ditches with sticks. I'm grateful I can go to Home Depot and grab a shovel.
Yeah.
That they can't do, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so many. I'm grateful for technology. I'm grateful my car runs. I'm grateful I can afford to pay for the gas, even though it's expensive.
Yeah.
I can afford to pay for it without a lot of impact.
Yeah.
And so
you can push a button and the light turns on. You can turn the faucet on and there's water coming out, most likely hot water if you want it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so I think the more we can look at that stuff, it's interesting when we were talking about clutter, I think about, when you've got somebody coming over and you just throw everything in a box and you just hide it all, right? And then you sit down, everybody walks in, they're like, oh, so pretty. And you're like, oh my God, this is so nice. And half the stuff in that box, you don't even need it.
No,
right? It's just piles that got added to the other piles that got added to the other piles. And when you have that nice, clean, fresh room, the living room or the backyard, oof. It just feels so good.
Yeah. And then what people do is then they put that box in the basement. When the basement is full, they put it in the garage. When the garage is full too, then they rent a storage unit. And then more money flies out the door. And, it's like... Yeah, it's funny what we do as humans, right?
We are funny. We are funny.
We are funny human beings, but emotional nutmegs. Or nutmegs or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's tell people where they can find you, because we haven't even talked about your podcast. So brag a little bit about your podcast, your book. Where can they find you?
Sure. So the best place to find me and all about me is themoneynerve.com. That's nerve, not nerd. I'm a nerd, but it's the Money Nerve, Nerve. That has free resources. It has my book. It has my children's book. I just started a financial literacy series for children. I've got an online course called Mastering the Emotions of Money. I have a podcast called Money You Should Ask, again, where we talk about money mindset and just trying to normalize conversations around money. And then I do one-on-one coaching with people. I also do taxes and stuff like that. And I get a lot of clients from people like Coach or podcasts that I'm on. And so, anything money, we're here to help. We're here to create a safe space. We're not here to shame you. We're here to just be really curious together. Wow, isn't that interesting? These are the things that I do to myself, even though I say I want this. And to just really, all of us are students. We're all just learning. I'm constantly learning. When sometimes people say, you're an expert, I'm like, no, I have a lot of experience. I don't ever want to be an expert. I want to be a student of life until the last breath.
Yeah,
for sure.
Thank you for saying that, because so many people always say, oh, you're an expert, claim it and own it and whatever. And I'm like, I might be an expert in a little tiny little sliver of life, but in the rest of the life, I'm just as dumb as anybody else.
Yeah. I'm just a student. I'm curious and I've learned a lot and I share what I've learned. And if it helps people, amazing. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay too.
Yeah. No, Bob, that was awesome. This conversation, I could talk with you much longer. And I really hope that we could get across to people that not all accountants are scary, that we can be funny. I want to ask that every guest, is there anything that I didn't ask? Is there anything you feel like is still missing? Like you feel in your bones, this still needs to come out. This needs to be still said.
I think the thing that's important for me, is to let everybody know it's not too late to step up. There are so many people that have kept their voice hidden, or they're afraid to do something wrong or look silly. And I would say to all those people out there that are questioning, they're living in their shame, they're living in their guilt, today's the day. Like, step up, talk with a quiver in your voice, do it imperfectly, make mistakes, show up, because you don't want to look back and say, wow, I wanted to have impact, but I was too scared to show up. Your voice matters. Your voice is unique. Take the opportunity and go for it, because life is short and nothing is promised. So
Thank you for that. We all need to hear this from time to time.
Yeah.
It's like maybe not for me in the money thing, but in other ways. So thank you very much for taking the time, sharing your wisdom and your expertise here on my podcast. Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Bob.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.